Chapter 9. I Scoop Poop. I lost hope when I saw the horse's teeth. As I got closer to the fence, I held my shirt over my nose to block the smell. One stallion waded through the muck and whinnied angrily at me. He bared his teeth, which were pointed like a bear's. I tried to talk to him in my mind. I can do that with most horses. "Hi," I told him. "I'm going to clean your stables. Wouldn't that be great?" "Yes," the horse said. "Come inside. Eat, you tasty half-blood." But I'm Poseidon's son," I protested. "He created horses." Usually this gets me VIP treatment in the equestrian world, but not this time. "Yes," the horse agreed enthusiastically. "Poseidon can come in too. We will eat you both. Seafood." Seafood! The other horses chimed in as they waded through the field. Flies are buzzing everywhere, and the heat of the day didn't make the smell any better. I'd had some idea that I could do this challenge, because I remembered how Hercules had done it. He'd channeled a river into the stables and cleaned them out that way. I figured I could maybe control the water, but if I couldn't get close to the horses without getting eaten, that was a problem. And the river was downhill from the stables, a lot further away than I'd realised, almost a kilometre. The problem of the poop looked a lot bigger up close. I picked up a rusted shovel and experimentally scooped some away from the fence line. Great, only 4 billion shovelfuls to go. The sun was already sinking. Had a few hours at best. I decided the river was my only hope. At least it would be easier to think at the riverside than it was here. I set off downhill. When I got to the river, I found a girl waiting for me. She was wearing jeans and a green t-shirt, and her long brown hair was braided with river grass. She had a stern look on her face. Her arms were crossed. "Oh no, you don't. Oh no, you don't," she said. I stared at her. "Are you a naiad?" She rolled her eyes. "Of course. But you speak English, and you're out of the water. What, you don't think we can act human if we want to?" I never thought about it. I felt kind of stupid, though, because I'd seen plenty of naiads at camp, and they'd never done much more than giggle and wave at me from the bottom of the canoe lake. "Look," I said, "I just came to ask—" "I know who you are," she said, "and I know what you want, and the answer is no, I'm not going to have my river used again to clean that filthy stable. But, oh, save it, sea boy. You ocean god types always think you're so much more important than some little river, don't you? Well, let me tell you, this naiad is not going to be pushed around just because your daddy is Poseidon. This is freshwater territory, mister. The last guy who asked me this favour, he was way better looking than you, by the way. He convinced me, and that was the worst mistake I'd ever made. Do you have any idea what all that horse manure does to my ecosystem? Do I look like a sewage treatment plant to you? My fish will die. I'll never get the muck out of my plants. I'll be sick for years. No, thank you." The way she talked reminded me of my mortal friend, Rachel Elizabeth Dare, kind of like she was punching me with words. I couldn't blame the naiad. Now that I thought about it, I'd be pretty mad if somebody dumped 2,000 tons of manure in my home. But still. "My friends are in danger," I told her. "Well, that's too bad, but it's not my problem, and you're not going to ruin my river." She looked like she was ready for a fight. Her fists were balled, but I thought I heard a little quaver in her voice. Suddenly I realised that despite her angry attitude, she was afraid of me. She probably thought I was going to fight her for control of the river, and she was worried she might lose. The thought made me sad. I felt like a bully, a son of Poseidon throwing his weight around. I sat down on a tree stump. "Okay, you win." The naiad looked surprised. "Really?" "I'm not going to fight you, it's your river." She relaxed her shoulders. Oh, good, good thing for you. But my friends and I are going to get sold to the Titans. And if I don't clean those stables by sunset, well, I don't know how." The river gurgled along cheerfully. A snake slid through the water and ducked its head underwater. Finally, the naiad sighed. "I'll tell you a secret, son of the sea god. Scoop up some dirt." "What? You heard me." I crouched down and scooped up a handful of Texas dirt. It was dry and black and spotted with tiny clumps of white rock. "No, something besides rock." "Those are shells," the naiad said. "Petrified seashells. Millions of years ago, even before the time of the gods, when only Gaia and Uranus reigned, this land was underwater. It was part of the sea." Suddenly I saw what she meant. There were little pieces of ancient sea urchins in my hand, mollusk shells. Even the limestone rocks had impressions of seashells embedded in them. "Okay," I said. "What good does that do me?" "You're not so different from me, demigod. Even when I'm out of the water is within me. It is my life source." She stepped back, put her feet in the river and smiled. "I hope you find a way to rescue your friends." And with that she turned to liquid and melted into the river. The sun was touching the hills when I got back to the stables. Somebody must have come by and fed the horses, because they were tearing into huge animal carcasses. I couldn't tell what kind of animal, and I really didn't want to know. If it was possible for the stables to get more disgusting, 50 horses tearing into raw meat did it. "Seafood!" One thought when he saw me. Come in, we're still hungry. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't use the river, and the fact that this place had been underwater 1,000,000 years ago didn't exactly help me now. I looked at the little calcified seashell in my palm, then at the huge mountain of dung. Frustrated, I threw the shell into the poop. I was about to turn my back on the horses when I heard a sound. Like a balloon with a leak. I looked down where I had thrown the shell. A tiny spout of water was shooting out of the muck. No way, I muttered. Hesitantly, I stepped towards the fence. Get bigger, I told the water spout. Spoosh! Water shot a metre into the air and kept bubbling. It was impossible, but there it was. A couple of horses came over to check it out. One put his mouth to the spring and recoiled. Yuck, he said. Salty! It was seawater in the middle of a Texas ranch. I scooped up another handful of dirt and picked out the shell fossils. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I ran around the length of the stable, throwing shells into the dung piles. Everywhere a shell hit, a saltwater spring erupted. Stop, the horses cried. Meat is good. Baths are bad. Then I noticed the water wasn't running out of the stables or flowing downhill like water normally would. It simply bubbled around each spring and sank into the ground, taking the dung with it. The horse poop dissolved in the salt water, leaving regular old wet earth. More, I yelled. There was a tugging sensation in my gut, and the water spout exploded like the world's largest car wash. Salt water shot 6 meters into the air. The horses went crazy, running back and forth as the geysers sprayed them from all directions. Mountains of poop began to melt like ice. The tugging sensation became more intense, painful even, but there was something exhilarating about seeing all the salt water. I had made this. I had brought the ocean to this hillside. Stop, Lord, a horse cried. Stop, please. Water was sloshing everywhere now. The horses were drenched, and some were panicking and slipping in the mud. The poop was completely gone. Tons of it just dissolved into the earth, and the water was now starting to pool, trickling out of the stable, making 100 little streams down towards the river. Stop, I told the water. Nothing happened. The pain in my gut was building. If I didn't shut off the geysers soon, the salt water would run into the river and poison the fish and plants. Stop! I concentrated all my might on shutting off the force of the sea. Suddenly the geysers shut down. I collapsed to my knee, exhausted. In front of me was a shiny, clean horse stable, a field of wet, salty mud, and 50 horses that had been scoured so thoroughly their coats gleamed. Even the meat scraps between their teeth had been washed out. We won't eat you, the horses wailed. Please, Lord, no more salty baths. On one condition, I said. You only eat the food your handlers give you from now on, not people, or I'll be back with more seashells. The horses whinnied and made me a whole lot of promises that they would be good flesh-eating horses from now on, but I didn't stick around to chat. The sun was going down. I turned and ran full speed towards the ranch house. I smelled barbecue before I reached the house, and that made me madder than ever because I really love barbecue. The deck was set up for a party. Streamers and balloons decorated the railing. Riordan was flipping burgers on a huge barbecue cooker made from an oil drum. Riordan lounged at a picnic table, picking his fingernails with a knife. The two-headed dog sniffed the ribs and burgers that were frying on the grill. And then I saw my friends. Tyson, Grover, Annabeth and Nico all tossed in a corner, tied up like rodeo animals, their ankles and wrists roped together and their mouths gagged. Let them go, I yelled, still out of breath from running up the steps. I cleaned the stables. Riordan turned. He wore an apron on each chest, with one word on each, so together they spelled out, Kiss the Chef. Did you now? How'd you manage it? I was pretty impatient, but I told them. He nodded appreciatively. Very ingenious. It would have been better if you poisoned the pesky naiad, but no matter. Let my friends go, I said. We had a deal. I've been thinking about that. The problem is, if I let them go, I don't get paid. You promised. Riordan made a noise. But did you make me swear on the river Styx? No, you didn't. So, it's not binding. When you're conducting business, Sonny, you should always get a binding oath. I drew my sword. Orpheus growled. One head leaned down next to Grover's ear and bared its fangs. Eurytion, Riordan said, the boy is starting to annoy me. Kill him. Eurytion studied me. I didn't like my odds against him and that huge club. Kill him yourself, Eurytion said. Riordan raised his eyebrows. Excuse me? You heard me, Eurytion grumbled. You keep sending me out to do your dirty work. You pick fights for no good reason, and I'm tired of dying for you. You want to fight the kid, do it yourself. It was the most un-Ares-like thing I'd ever heard a son of Ares say. Riordan threw down his spatula. You dare defy me? I should fire you right now. And who'd take care of your cattle? Orphus? Heel? The dog immediately stopped growling at Grover and came to sit by the cowherd's feet. Fine, Gayron snarled. I'll deal with you later after the boy is dead. He picked up 2 carving knives and threw them at me. I deflected one with my sword. The other impaled itself in the picnic table, a millimetre from Eurytion's hand. I went on the attack. Gayron parried my first strike with a pair of red-hot tongues and lunged at my face with a barbecue fork. I got inside the next thrust and stabbed him right through the middle chest. Ah! He crumpled to his knees. I waited for him to disintegrate, the way monsters usually do. But instead he just grimaced and began to stand up. The bleeding slice through his chef's apron started to heal. Nice try, Sonny, he said. Thing is, I have 3 hearts, the perfect backup system. He tipped over the barbecue and coals spilled everywhere. One landed next to Annabeth's face and she let out a muffled scream. Tyson strained against his bonds, but even his strength wasn't enough to break them. I had to end this fight before my friends got hurt. I jabbed Gayron in the left chest, but he only laughed. I stuck him in the right stomach. No good. I might as well have been sticking a sword in a teddy bear for all the reaction he showed. 3 hearts. This perfect backup system, stabbing one at a time, was no good. I ran into the house. Coward, he cried. Come back and die right. The living room walls were decorated with a bunch of gruesome hunting trophies, stuffed deer and dragon heads, a gun case, a sword display, and a bow with a quiver. Gayron threw his barbecue fork, and it thudded into the wall right next to my head. He drew 2 swords from the wall display. Your head's going to go right there, Jackson, next to the grizzly bear. I had a crazy idea. I dropped Riptide and grabbed the bow off the wall. I was the worst archery shot in the world. I couldn't hit the targets at camp, much less a bullseye, but I had no choice. I couldn't win this fight with a sword. I prayed to Artemis and Apollo, the twin archers, hoping they might take pity on me for once. Please, guys, just 1 shot. Please. I notched an arrow. Gayron laughed. You fool, 1 arrow is no better than 1 sword. He raised his swords and charged. I dived sideways. Before he could turn, I shot my arrow into the side of his right chest. I heard thump, thump, thump as the arrow passed clean through each of his chests and flew out of his left side, embedding itself in the forehead of the grizzly bear trophy. Gayron dropped his swords. He turned and stared at me. You can't shoot. They told me you couldn't. His face turned a sickly shade of green. He collapsed to his knees and began crumpling into sand until all that was left were 3 cooking aprons and an oversized pair of cowboy boots. I got my friends untied. Eurytion didn't try to stop me. And then I stoked up the barbecue and threw the food into the flames as a burnt offering to Artemis and Apollo. Thanks, guys, I said. I owe you one. The sky thundered in the distance, so I figured maybe the burgers smelled okay. Yay for Percy, Tyson said. Can we tie up this cowherd now? Nico asked. Yeah, Grover agreed, and that dog almost killed me. I looked at Eurytion, who was still sitting relaxed at the picnic table. Orphus had both his heads on the cowherd's knees. How long will it take Gayron to reform? I asked him. Eurytion shrugged. 100 years? He's not one of those fast reformers, thank the gods. You done me a favour. You said you died for him before, I remembered. How? I've worked for that creep for thousands of years. Started as a regular half-blood, but I chose immortality with my dad when my dad offered it. Worst mistake I ever made. Now I'm stuck here at this ranch. I can't leave. I can't quit. I just tend the cows and fight Gayron's fights. We're kind of tied together. Maybe you can change things, I said. Eurytion narrowed his eyes. How? Be nice to the animals. Take care of them. Stop selling them for food and stop dealing with the Titans. Eurytion thought about that. That'd be all right. Get the animals on your side, and they'll help you. Once Gayron gets back, maybe he'll be working for you this time. Eurytion grinned. Now that I could live with. You won't try to stop us leaving? Shoot, no. Annabeth rubbed her bruised wrists. She was still looking at Eurytion suspiciously. Your boss said that somebody paid for our safe passage. Who? The cowherd shrugged. Maybe he was just saying that to fool you. What about the Titans, I asked. Did you iris message them about Nico yet? Nope. Gayron was waiting until after the barbecue. They don't know anything about him. Nico was glaring at me. I wasn't sure what to do about him. I doubted he would agree to come with us. On the other hand, I couldn't just let him roam around on his own. You could stay here until we're done with our quest, I told him. It will be safe. Safe, Nico said. What do you care if I'm safe? You got my sister killed. Nico, Annabeth said, that wasn't Percy's fault, and Gayron wasn't lying about Kronos wanting to capture you. If he knew who you were, he'd do anything to get you on his side. I'm not on anyone's side. I'm not afraid. You should be. Annabeth said. Your sister wouldn't want... If you cared for my sister, you'd help me bring her back. A soul for a soul? I said. Yes, but if you didn't want my soul, I'm not explaining anything to you. He blinked tears out of his eyes, and I will bring her back. Bianca wouldn't want to be brought back, I said. Not like that. You don't know her. You didn't know her, he shouted. How do you know what she'd want? I stared at the flames in the barbecue pit. I thought about the line in Annabeth's prophecy. You shall rise or fall by the Ghost King's hand. And that had to be Minos, and I had to convince Nico not to listen to him. Let's ask Bianca. The sky seemed to grow darker all of a sudden. I've tried, Nico said miserably. She won't answer. Try again. I've got a feeling she'll answer, with me here. Why should she? Because she's been sending me iris messages, I said, suddenly sure of it. She's been trying to warn me what you're up to, so I can protect you. Nico shook his head. That's impossible. One way to find out. You said you're not afraid. I turned to Eurytion. We're going to need a pit, like a grave, and food and drinks. Percy, Annabeth warned. I don't think this is a good... All right, Nico said. I'll try. Eurytion scratched his beard. There's a hole dug out back from a septic tank. We could use that. Cyclops boy, fetch my ice chest from the kitchen. I hope the dead like root beer. Chapter 10. We play the game show of death. We did our summons after dark at a 7-metre-long pit in front of the septic tank. The tank was bright yellow, with a smiley face and red words painted on the side. Happy Flush Disposal Company. It didn't quite go with the mood of summoning the dead. The moon was full. Silver clouds drifted across the sky. Minos should be here by now, Nico said, frowning. It's full dark. Maybe he got lost, I said hopefully. Nico poured root beer and tossed barbecue into the pit, and then began chanting in ancient Greek. Immediately, the bugs in the woods started chirping. In my pocket, the Stygian ice dog whistle started to grow colder, freezing against the side of my leg. Make him stop, Tyson whispered to me. Part of me agreed. This was unnatural. The night air felt cold and menacing. But before I could say anything, the first spirits appeared. Sulphurous mist seeped out of the ground. Shadows thickened into human forms. One blue shade drifted to the edge of the pit and knelt to drink. Stop him, Nico said, momentarily breaking his chant. Only Bianca may drink. I drew Riptide, and the ghosts retreated with a collective hiss at the sight of my celestial bronze blade. But it was too late to stop the first spirit. He had already solidified into the shape of a bearded man in white robes. A circlet of gold wreathed his head, and even in death his eyes were alive with malice. Minos, Nico said, what are you doing? My apologies, master, the ghost said, though he didn't sound very sorry. The sacrifice smelled so good I couldn't resist. He examined his own hands and smiled. It is good to see myself again, almost in solid form. You are disrupting the ritual, Nico protested. The spirits of the dead began shimmering dangerously bright, and Nico had to take up the chant again to keep them at bay. Yes, quite right, master, Minos said with amusement. You keep chanting. I have only come to protect you from these liars who would deceive you. He turned to me as if I was some kind of cockroach. Percy Jackson. My. The sons of Poseidon haven't improved over the centuries, have they? I wanted to punch him, but I figured my fist would go right through his face. We're looking for Bianca D'Angelo, I said. Get lost. The ghost chuckled. I understand you once killed my Minotaur with your bare hands, but worse things await you in the maze. Do you really believe Daedalus will help you? The other spirits stirred in agitation. Annabeth drew her knife and helped me keep them away from the pit. Grover got so nervous he clung to Tyson's shoulder. Daedalus cares nothing for you, half-bloods, Minos warned. You can't trust him. He is old beyond counting and crafty. He is bitter from the guilt of murder and is cursed by the gods. The guilt of murder? I asked. Who did he kill? Do not change the subject, the ghost growled. You are hindering Nico. You try to persuade him to give up his goal. I would make him a lord. Enough, Minos, Nico commanded. The ghost sneered. Master, these are your enemies. You must not listen to them. Let me protect you. I will turn their minds to madness, as I did the others. The others? Annabeth gasped. You mean Chris Rodriguez? That was you. The maze is my property, the ghost said. Not Daedalus's. Those who intrude deserve madness. Begone, Minos, Nico demanded. I want to see my sister. The ghost bit back his rage. As you wish, master, but I warn you, you cannot trust these heroes. With that, he faded into mist. Other spirits rushed forward, but Annabeth and I kept them back. Bianca, appear, Nico intoned. He started chanting faster, and the spirit shifted restlessly. "Any time now," Grover muttered. Then a silvery light flickered in the trees, a spirit that seemed brighter and stronger than the others. It came closer, and something told me to let it pass. It knelt to drink at the pit. When it arose, it was the ghostly form of Bianca D'Angelo. Nico's chanting faltered. I lowered my sword. The other spirits started to crowd forward, but Bianca raised her arms, and they retreated into the woods. "Hello, Percy," she said. She looked the same as she had in life, a green cap set sideways on her thick black hair, dark eyes and olive skin like her brother. She wore jeans and a silvery jacket, the outfit of a hunter of Artemis. A bow was slung over her shoulder. She smiled faintly, and her whole form flickered. "Bianca," I said. My voice was thick. I'd felt guilty about her death for a long time, but seeing her in front of me were 5 times as bad, like her death was fresh and new. I remembered searching through the wreckage of the giant bronze warrior she'd sacrificed her life to defeat, and not finding any sign of her. "I'm so sorry," I said. "You have nothing to apologize for, Percy. I made my own choice. I don't regret it." "Bianca." Nico stumbled forward like he was just coming out of a daze. She turned towards her brother. Her expression was sad, as if she'd been dreading this moment. "Hello, Nico. You've got so tall." "Why didn't you answer me sooner?" he cried. "I've been trying for months." "I was hoping you would give up." "Give up?" He sounded heartbroken. "How can you say that? I'm trying to save you." "You can't, Nico. Don't do this. Percy is right." "No, he let you die. He's not your friend." Bianca stretched out a hand as if to touch her brother's face, but she was made of mist. Her hand evaporated as it got close to living skin. "You must listen to me," she said. "Holding grudges is dangerous for a child of Hades. It is our fatal flaw. You have to forgive. You have to promise me this." "I can't. Never." "Percy has been worried about you, Nico. He can help. I let him see what you were up to, hoping he would find you." "So it was you," I said. "You sent those iris messages." Bianca nodded. "Why are you helping him and not me?" Nico screamed. "It's not fair." "You are close to the truth now," Bianca told him. "It's not Percy you're mad at, Nico. It's me." "No! You're mad because I left you to become a hunter of Artemis. You're mad because I died and left you alone. I'm sorry for that, Nico. I truly am. But you must overcome the anger and stop blaming Percy for my choices. It will be your doom." "She's right," Annabeth broke in. "Kronos is rising. Nico, he'll twist anyone he can to his cause." "I don't care about Kronos," Nico said. "I just want my sister back." "You can't have that, Nico," Bianca told him gently. "I'm the son of Hades. I can." "Don't try," she said. "If you love me, don't." Her voice trailed off. Spirits had started to gather around us again, and they seemed agitated. Their shadows shifted. Their voices whispered. "Danger." "Tartarus stirs," Bianca said. "Your power draws the attention of Kronos. The dead must return to the underworld. It is not safe for us to remain." "Wait," Nico said. "Please." "Goodbye, Nico," Bianca said. "I love you. Remember what I said." Her form shivered, and the ghost disappeared, leaving us alone with a pit, a happy flush septic tank, and a cold full moon. None of us were anxious to travel that night, so we decided to wait until morning. Grover and I crashed on the leather couches in Geron's living room, which was a lot more comfortable than a bedroll in the maze, but it didn't make my nightmares any better. I dreamed I was with Luke, walking through the dark palace on top of Mount Tam. It was a real building now, not some half-finished illusion like I'd seen last winter. Green fires burned in braziers along the walls. The floor was polished black marble. A cold wind blew down the hallway, and above us through the open ceiling, the sky swirled with grey storm clouds. Luke was dressed for battle. He wore camouflage combats, a white t-shirt and a bronze breastplate, but his sword, Backbiter, wasn't at his side, only an empty scabbard. He walked into a large courtyard where dozens of warriors and Draconai were preparing for war. When they saw him, the demigods rose to attention. They beat their swords against their shields. "Is it time, my lord?" a Draconai asked. "Soon," Luke promised. "Continue your work." "My lord," a voice said behind him. Kelly, the Impusa, was smiling at him. She wore a blue dress tonight and looked wickedly beautiful. Her eyes flickered, sometimes dark brown, sometimes pure red. Her hair was braided down her back and seemed to catch the light of the torches, as if it were anxious to turn back into pure flame. My heart was pounding. I waited for Kelly to see me, to chase me out of the dream as she had before, but this time she didn't seem to notice me. "You have a visitor," she told Luke. She stepped aside, and even Luke seemed stunned by what he saw. The monster, Campe, towered above him. Her snakes hissed around her legs. Animal heads growled at her waist. Her swords were drawn, shimmering with poison, and with her bat wings extended, she took up the entire corridor. You! Luke's voice sounded a little shaky. I told you to stay on Alcatraz. Campe's eyelids blinked sideways like a reptile's. She spoke in that weird rumbling language, but this time I understood. Somewhere in the back of my mind. I come to serve. Give me revenge. You're a jailer, Luke said. Your job. I will have them dead. No one escapes me. Luke hesitated. A line of sweat trickled down the side of his face. Very well, he said. You will go with us. You may carry Ariadne's string. It is a position of great honour. Campe hissed at the stars. She sheathed her swords and turned, pounding down the hallway on her enormous dragon legs. We should have left that one in Tartarus, Luke mumbled. She is too chaotic, too powerful. Kelly laughed softly. You should not fear power, Luke. Use it. The sooner we leave, the better, Luke said. I want this over with. Oh, Kelly sympathised, running a finger down his arm. You find it unpleasant to destroy your old camp. I didn't say that. You're not having second thoughts about your own special part. Luke's face turned stony. I know my duty. That is good, the demon said. Is our strike force sufficient, do you think? Or will I need to call Mother Hecate for help? We have more than enough, Luke said grimly. The deal is almost complete. All I need now is to negotiate safe passage through the arena. Kelly said. That should be interesting. I would hate to see your handsome head on a spike if you fail. I will not fail. And you, demon, don't you have other matters to attend to? Oh, yes. Kelly smiled. I am bringing despair to our eavesdropping enemies. I am doing that right now. She turned her eyes directly on me, exposed her talons, and ripped through my dream. Suddenly I was in a different place. I stood at the top of a stone tower, overlooking rocky cliffs and the ocean below. The old man Daedalus was hunched over a work table, wrestling with some kind of navigational instrument, like a huge compass. He looked years older than when I'd last seen him. He was stooped and his hands were gnarled. He cursed in ancient Greek and squinted as if he couldn't see his work, even though it was a sunny day. Uncle, a voice called. A smiling boy about Nico's age came bounding up the steps, carrying a wooden box. Hello, Perdix, the old man said, though his tone sounded cold. Done with your projects already? Yes, uncle. They were easy. Daedalus scowled. Easy? The problem of moving water uphill without a pump was easy? Oh, yes. Look. The boy dumped his box and rummaged through the junk. He came up with a strip of papyrus and showed the old inventor some diagrams and notes. They didn't make any sense to me, but Daedalus nodded grudgingly. I see. Not bad. The king loved it, Perdix said. He said I might be even smarter than you. Did he now? But I don't believe that. I'm so glad Mother sent me to study with you. I want to know everything you do. Yes, Daedalus muttered. So when I die, you can take my place, eh? The boy's eyes widened. Oh, no, uncle. But I've been thinking, why does a man have to die anyway? The inventor scowled. It is the way of things, lad. Everything dies but the gods. But why? The boy insisted. If you could capture the animus, the soul in another form. Well, you've told me about your automatons, uncle. Bulls, eagles, dragons, horses of bronze. Why not a bronze form of a man? No, my boy, Daedalus said sharply. You are naive. Such a thing is impossible. I don't think so, Perdix insisted, with the use of a little magic. Magic? Bah! Yes, uncle. Magic and mechanics together. With a little work, one could make a body that would look exactly human, only better. I've made some notes. He handed the old man a thick scroll. Daedalus unfurled it. He read for a long time. His eyes narrowed. He glanced at the boy and then closed the scroll and cleared his throat. It would never work, my boy. When you're older, you'll see. Can I fix that astrolabe then, uncle? Are your joints swelling up again? The old man's jaw clenched. No, thank you. Now, why don't you run along? Perdix didn't seem to notice the old man's anger. He snatched a bronze beetle from his mound of stuff and ran to the edge of the tower. A low sill ringed the rim, coming just up to the boy's knees. The wind was strong. Move back, I wanted to tell him, but my voice didn't work. Perdix wound up the beetle and tossed it up into the sky. It spread its wings and hummed away. Perdix laughed with delight. Smarter than me, Daedalus mumbled, too softly for the boy to hear. Is it true your son died flying, uncle? I heard you made him enormous wings, but they failed. Daedalus's hands clenched. Take my place, he muttered. The wind whipped around the boy, tugging at his clothes, making his hair ripple. I would like to fly, Perdix said. I'd make my own wings that wouldn't fail. Do you think I could? Maybe it was a dream within my dream, but suddenly I imagined the two-headed god Janus shimmering in the air next to Daedalus, smiling as he tossed a silver key from hand to hand. "Choose," he whispered to the old inventor. "Choose." Daedalus picked up another one of the boy's metal bugs. The inventor's old eyes were red with anger. "Perdix," he called. "Catch!" He tossed the bronze beetle towards the boy. Delighted, Perdix tried to catch it, but the throw was too long. The beetle sailed into open sky, and Perdix reached a little too far, and the wind caught him. Somehow he managed to grab the rim of the tower with his fingers as he fell. "Uncle!" he screamed. "Help me!" The old man's face was a mask. He did not move from his spot. "Go on, Perdix," Daedalus said softly. "Make your own wings. Be quick about it." "Uncle!" the boy cried as he lost his grip, and he tumbled towards the sea. There was a moment of deadly silence. The god Janus flickered and disappeared, and then thunder shook the sky. A woman's stern voice spoke from above. "You will pay the price of that, Daedalus." I'd heard that voice before. It was Annabeth's mother, Athena. Daedalus scowled up at the heavens. "I have always honoured you, mother. I have sacrificed everything to follow your way." "Yet the boy had my blessing as well, and you have killed him. For that you must pay." "I've paid and paid," Daedalus growled. "I've lost everything. I'll suffer in the underworld, no doubt, but in the meantime—" He picked up the boy's scroll, studied it for a moment, and slipped it into his sleeve. "You do not understand," Athena said coldly. "You will pay now and forever." Suddenly, Daedalus collapsed in agony. I felt what he felt. A searing pain closed around my neck like a molten hot collar, cutting off my breath, making everything go black. I woke in the dark, my hands clutching at my throat. "Percy?" Grover called from the other sofa. "Are you okay?" I steadied my breathing. I wasn't sure how to answer. I just watched the guy we were looking for, Daedalus, murder his own nephew. How could I be okay? The television was going. Blue light flickered through the room. What time is it?" I croaked. 2 a.m, Grover said. "I couldn't sleep. I was watching the Nature Channel." He sniffled. "I miss Juniper." I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes. "Yeah, well, you'll see her again soon." Grover shook his head sadly. "Do you know what day it is, Percy? I just saw it on TV. It's June 13th. 7 days since we left camp." "What?" I said. "That can't be right. Time is faster in the Labyrinth," Grover reminded me. "The first time you and Annabeth went down there, you thought you were only gone for a few minutes, right? But it was an hour." "Oh," I said, "right." And then it dawned on me what he was saying, and my throat felt searing hot again. "Your deadline with the Council of Cloven Elders." Grover put the TV remote in his mouth and crunched off the end of it. "I'm out of time," he said with a mouthful of plastic. "As soon as I go back, they'll take away my searcher's license. I'll never be allowed to go out again." "We'll talk to them," I promised. "Make them give you more time." Grover swallowed. "They'll never go for it. The world is dying, Percy. Every day it gets worse. The wild. I can just feel it fading. I have to find Pan." "You will, man. No doubt." Grover looked at me with sad goat eyes. "You've always been a good friend, Percy. What you did today, saving the ranch animals from Riordan, that was amazing. I wish I could be more like you." "Hey," I said, "don't say that. You're just as much a hero." "No, I'm not. I keep trying, but—" He sighed. "Percy, I can't go back to camp without finding Pan. I just can't. You understand that, don't you? I can't face Juniper if I fail. I can't even face myself." His voice was so unhappy, it hurt to hear. We'd been through a lot together, but I'd never heard him sound this down. "We'll figure out something," I said. "You haven't failed. You're the champion goat boy, all right? Juniper knows that. So do I." Grover closed his eyes. "Champion goat boy," he muttered dejectedly. A long time after he had dozed off, I was still awake, watching the blue light of the Nature Channel wash over the stuffed trophy heads on Riordan's walls. The next morning, we walked down to the cattle grid and said our goodbyes. "Nico, you could come with us," I blurted out. I guess I was thinking about my dream and how much the young boy Perdix reminded me of Nico. He shook his head. I don't think one of us had slept well in the Demon Ranch house, but Nico looked worse than anybody else. His eyes were red and his face chalky. He was wrapped in a black robe that must have belonged to Riordan, because it was 3 sizes too big even for a grown man. "I need time to think." His eyes wouldn't meet mine, but I could tell from his tone he was still angry. The fact that his sister had come out of the underworld for me and not for him didn't seem to sit well with him. "Nico," Annabeth said, "Bianca just wants you to be okay." She put her hand on his shoulder, but he pulled away and trudged up the road towards the ranch house. Maybe it was my imagination, but the morning mist seemed to cling to him as he walked. I'm worried about him, Annabeth told me. If he starts talking to Minos's ghost again. He'll be all right, Eurytion promised. The cowherd had cleaned up nicely. He was wearing new jeans and a clean western shirt, and he even trimmed his beard. He put on Gairen's boots. The boy can stay here in Gaver's forts as long as he wants. He'll be safe, I promise. What about you? I asked. Eurytion scratched Orpheus behind one chin, and then the other. Things are going to run a little different in this ranch from now on. No more sacred camel meat. I'm thinking about soybean patties, and I'm going to befriend those flesh-eating horses. Might just sign up for the next rodeo. The idea made me shudder. Well, good luck. Yep. Eurytion spat into the grass. I reckon you'll be looking for Daedalus's workshop now. Annabeth's eyes lit up. Can you help us? Eurytion studied the cattle grid, and I got the feeling the subject of Daedalus's workshop made him uncomfortable. Don't know where it is, but Hephaestus probably would. That's what Hera said, Annabeth agreed. But how do we find Hephaestus? Eurytion pulled something from under the collar of his shirt. It was a necklace, a smooth silver disc on a silver chain. The disc had a depression on the middle, like a thumbprint. He handed it to Annabeth. Hephaestus comes here from time to time, Eurytion said. Studies the animals and such so he can make bronze automaton copies. Last time I did him a favour. A little trick he wanted to play on my dad, Ares, and Aphrodite. He gave me that chain in gratitude. Said if I ever needed to find him, the disc would lead me to his forges, but only once. And you're giving it to me? Annabeth asked. Eurytion blushed. I don't need to see the forge, miss. Got enough to do here. Just press the button and you'll be on your way. Annabeth pressed the button, and the disc sprang to life. It grew 8 metallic legs. Annabeth shrieked and dropped it, much to Eurytion's confusion. Spider! She screamed. She's, a little scared of spiders, Grover explained. That old grudge between Athena and Arachne. Oh, Eurytion looked embarrassed. Sorry, miss. The spider scrambled to the cattle grid and disappeared between the bars. Hurry, I said. That thing's not going to wait for us. Annabeth wasn't anxious to follow, but we didn't have much choice. We said our goodbyes to Eurytion. Tyson pulled the cattle grid off the hole, and we dropped back into the maze. I wish I could have put the mechanical spider on a leash. It scuttled along the tunnel so fast that most of the time I couldn't even see it. If it hadn't been for Tyson's and Grover's excellent hearing, we never would have known which way it was going. We ran down a marble tunnel and then dashed to the left and almost fell into an abyss. Tyson grabbed me and hauled me back before I could fall. The tunnel continued in front of us, but there was no floor for about 30 metres, just gaping darkness and a series of iron rungs in the ceiling. The mechanical spider was about halfway across, swinging from bar to bar by shooting out metal web fibre. Monkey bars, Annabeth said. I'm great at these. She leapt onto the first rung and started swinging her way across. She was scared of tiny spiders, but not of plummeting to her death from a set of monkey bars. Go figure. Annabeth got to the opposite side and ran after the spider. I followed. When I got across, I looked back and saw Tyson giving Grover a piggyback ride. Or was it a goatee-back ride? The big guy made it across in 3 swings, which was a good thing since just as he landed, the last iron bar ripped free under his weight. We kept moving and passed a skeleton crumpled in the tunnel. It wore the remains of a dress shirt, trousers and a tie. The spider didn't slow down. I slipped on a pile of wood scraps, but when I shone a light on them, I realised they were pencils, hundreds of them, all broken in half. The tunnel opened up into a large room. A blazing light hit us. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I noticed were the skeletons. Dozens littered the floor around us. Some were old and bleached white. Others were more recent and a lot grosser. They didn't smell quite as bad as Gairon's stables, but almost. Then I saw the monster. She stood on a glittery dais on the opposite side of the room. She had the body of a huge lion and the head of a woman. She would have been pretty, but her hair was tied back in a tight bun, and she wore too much makeup. So she kind of reminded me of my 3rd grade choir teacher. She had a blue ribbon badge pinned to her chest that took me a moment to read. This monster has been rated exemplary. Tyson whimpered. Sphinx! I knew exactly why he was scared. When he was small, Tyson had been attacked by a sphinx in New York. He still had the scars on his back to prove it. Spotlights blazed on either side of the creature. The only exit was a tunnel right behind the dais. The mechanical spider scuttled between the sphinx's paws and disappeared. Annabeth started forward, but the sphinx roared, showing fangs in her otherwise human face. Bars came down on both tunnel exits behind us and in front. Immediately the monster's snarl turned into a brilliant smile. Welcome, lucky contestants, she announced. Get ready to play. Answer that riddle. Canned applause blasted from the ceiling as if there were invisible loudspeakers. Spotlights swept across the room and reflected off the dais, throwing disco glitter over the skeletons on the floor. "Fabulous prizes," the Sphinx said. "Pass the test and you get to advance. Fail, and I get to eat you. Who will be our contestant?" Annabeth grabbed my arm. "I've got this," she whispered. "I know what she's going to ask." I didn't argue too hard. I didn't want Annabeth getting devoured by a monster, but I figured if the Sphinx were going to ask riddles, Annabeth was the best one of us to try. She stepped forward to the contestants' podium, which had a skeleton in a school uniform hunched over it. She pushed the skeleton out of the way, and it clattered to the floor. "Sorry," Annabeth told it. "Welcome, Annabeth Chase," the monster cried, though Annabeth hadn't said her name. "Are you ready for your test?" "Yes," she said. "Ask your riddle." 20 riddles, actually," the Sphinx said gleefully. "What? But back in the old days? Oh, we've raised our standards. To pass, you must show proficiency in all 20. Isn't that great?" Applause switched on and off like somebody turning a faucet. Annabeth glanced at me nervously. I gave her an encouraging nod. "Okay," she told the Sphinx. I'm ready." A drum roll sounded from above. The Sphinx's eyes glittered with excitement. "What is the capital of Bulgaria?" Annabeth frowned. For a terrible moment I thought she was stumped. "Sofia," she said. "But—" "Correct!" More canned applause. The Sphinx smiled, so wide her fangs showed. "Please be sure to mark your answer clearly on your test sheet with a 2B pencil." "What?" Annabeth looked mystified. Then a test booklet appeared on the podium in front of her, along with a sharpened pencil. "Make sure you bubble each answer clearly and stay inside the circle," the Sphinx said. "If you have to erase completely, or the machine will not be able to read your answers." "What machine?" Annabeth asked. The Sphinx pointed with her paw. Over by the spotlight was a bronze box with a bunch of gears and levers and a big Greek letter H, Eta, on the side, the marker for Hephaestus. "Now," said the Sphinx, "next question." "Wait a second," Annabeth protested. What walks on 4 legs in the morning?" "I beg your pardon?" the Sphinx said, clearly annoyed now. "The riddle about man. He walks on 4 legs in morning like a baby, 2 legs in the afternoon like an adult, and 3 legs in the evening as an old man with a cane. That's the riddle you used to ask." "Exactly why we changed the test," the Sphinx exclaimed. "You already knew the answer. Now, second question. What is the square root of 16? 4, Annabeth said. "But correct. Which US president signed the Emancipation Proclamation?" "Abraham Lincoln, but correct." Riddle number 4. How much— "Hold up," Annabeth shouted. I wanted to tell her to stop complaining. She was doing great. She should just answer the questions so we could leave. "These aren't riddles," Annabeth said. "What do you mean?" the Sphinx snapped. "Of course they are. This test material is specially designed—" "It's just a bunch of dumb random facts," Annabeth insisted. "Riddles are supposed to make you think." "Think?" the Sphinx frowned. "How am I supposed to test whether you can think? That's ridiculous. Now, how much force is required—" "Stop!" Annabeth insisted. "This is a stupid test." Annabeth," Grover cut in nervously, "maybe you should finish first and complain later." "I'm a child of Athena," she insisted, "and this is an insult to my intelligence. I won't answer these questions." Part of me was impressed with her for standing up like that, but part of me thought her pride was going to get us all killed. The spotlights glared. The Sphinx's eyes glittered pure black. "Why then, my dear," the monster said calmly, "if you won't pass, you fail. And since we can't allow any children to be held back, you'll be eaten." The Sphinx bared her claws, which gleamed like stainless steel. She pounced at the podium. "No!" Tyson charged. He hates it when people threaten Annabeth, but I couldn't believe he was being so brave, especially since he'd had such a bad experience with a Sphinx before. He tackled the Sphinx mid-air, and they crashed sideways into a pile of bones. This gave Annabeth just enough time to gather her wits and draw her knife. Tyson got up, his shirt clawed to shreds. The Sphinx growled, looking for an opening. I drew Riptide and stepped in front of Annabeth. "Turn invisible," I told her. "I can fight." "No," I yelled. "The Sphinx is after you. Let us get it." As if to prove my point, the Sphinx knocked Tyson aside and tried to charge past me. Grover poked her in the eye with somebody's leg bone. She screeched in pain. Annabeth put on her cap and vanished. The Sphinx pounced right where she'd been standing, but came up with empty paws. "No fair!" the Sphinx wailed. "Cheater!" With Annabeth no longer in sight, the Sphinx turned on me. I raised my sword, but before I could strike, Tyson ripped the monster's grading machine out of the floor and threw it at the monster's head, ruining her hair bun. It landed in pieces all around her. "My grading machine!" she cried. "I can't be exemplary without my test scores!" The bars lifted from the exits. We all dashed for the far tunnel. I could only hope Annabeth was doing the same. The Sphinx started to follow, but Grover raised his reed pipes and began to play. Suddenly the pencils remembered they used to be parts of trees. They collected around the Sphinx's paws, grew roots and branches, and began wrapping around the monster's legs. The Sphinx ripped through them, but it bought us just enough time. Tyson pulled Grover into the tunnel, and the bars slammed shut behind us. "Annabeth," I yelled. "Here," she said right next to me. "Keep moving." We ran through the dark tunnels, listening to the roar of the Sphinx behind us as she complained about all the tests she would have to grade by hand.